first of all, let's talk about your history here at EAB. Obviously, the elementary version of it. We don't want to get to the adult version because I know there's some good stories there. But let's keep it elementary today. Are family friendly. Let's put it that way, right?
Always.
So, tell me about how you came to be where you are today at EAB.
I guess people always say they fall into a job. This is literally kind of that situation. When you're in high school, or I don't know what they do now, but, there was an aptitude test when I was graduating. Obviously, good science, good math. They pegged me for the medical field. A lot of people don't know that about me, that originally coming out of high school, I went to nursing school, started there with the idea of being an anesthesiologist. How I picked that was looked at the pay scales. It's like, man, that looks great.
It's funny.
Wasn't there very long.
I wanted to be an anesthesiologist at one point in time, too.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
then I realized I'm not a good doctor.
Well, it wasn't that I wouldn't have been a good doctor. It was like, man, this is a lot of years. So then I was like, well, maybe nurse anesthetists, they still do good for themselves. Anyway, that didn't work out. Medical field wasn't for me. College really wasn't for me. Every time it seemed like I tried to go, life got in the way, something came up. But I was actually working at a car dealership, and a gentleman was out doing pinstriping. Said, hey, I can't remember if it was a cousin, uncle, or what it was, said, hey, I know a company, these guys are looking for some help for the summer. Would y'all be interested? Said yes, and then that's kind of how it started. Kind of expected it to be, I was in between, still thinking, hey, am I still going to go to college? This might just be a summer.
And that was here in Houston, because you grew up here in Houston, right?
That is correct. Went to Humble High School. So, just kind of fell into the job. It was an opportunity. Thought maybe it was just going to be kind of a summer gig. Interview was kind of funny. Gar was always kind of to the point. I interviewed with him before Galen called me in. The two questions were, are you good in math? I was like, well, yeah, I've always been in the top percentile in all the testing. Can you use a calculator on a ladder? I was like, yes. He's like, yeah, we need to find a place for you. I was like, all right, man. So,
we've graduated in our interviewing standards.
Oh
now, right?
We've got a real thorough process now. So now I really fell into the job. Didn't know if it was going to go beyond the summer. It sounded like it was a summer help thing. They were busy. I was still kind of in flux. Really didn't know what I wanted to do, whether I was going to go back to college. Anyway, it ended up being a great fit. Right? It kind of played to my strengths. I've always been real mechanical. Used to tear apart stuff apart as a kid, 8 years old, taking electronics, apart, putting them back together. Rebuilt a motorcycle at like 12 years old. Always real mechanical. That stuff came easy to me. The job just kind of fit, what my strengths were. Kind of went on from there. So that's how I ended up 97. So I've been here going for roughly 28 years in the industry.
Yeah. So you started out here in Houston as a technician in training, thinking it was just going to be a summer gig, I guess.
Yeah.
And what were you working on?
The first project was University of Houston. It was a downtown project with Ted.
Okay.
I think he was knowing a little more now. That job was really kind of towards the end, and I think we were just going back on really punch list, finalizing that job out. Went over to Compact with Terry in kind of the dead time when we didn't have stuff out there, and ultimately ended up with, in a short period of time, ended up with Greg Miller down in the medical center.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So when you made the shift over there, at that point, how long had you been here when you kind of?
Oh man,
shifted?
not long. 3 to 6 months. It was quick.
Okay. So you ended up down there with Greg. Obviously, I think you and I will both agree because Greg was a mentor of mine. Did you learn something from Greg?
Oh man, I loved working with Greg. And I don't want to leave David Teague out of that. Really, I partnered up. I was sent to work with David under Greg, and then eventually ended up with Greg just me and him
Yeah.
out there at the medical center. But no, Greg was great. One thing about if you're working, say K through 12, you're working hospitals, you're working labs. There's particular systems that are going to be on those jobs, right? I mean, and the one thing I liked about Greg, I was always very inquisitive. I always wanted to know how stuff worked. I always wanted to take stuff apart, what made stuff tick. And he was that guy at lunch that we could sit there and talk, and he would break it down for me. He would draw pictures. If I was in the office and guys were talking about fan-powered boxes, which is typically a K through 12 thing, well, being down at the medical center, I mean, we dealt with, a lot of lab valves, a lot of stuff that you would see in the healthcare industry. Had no idea what fan-powered box was, but he broke it down for me. Pneumatics. I mean, pneumatics is something that a lot of people that might end up watching this podcast would have no idea what a pneumatic controller is, but he broke that down for me, explained to me how it worked. So he was a really good mentor, really good teacher, really knew the ins and outs, and really knew how to put it in plain English.
Yeah.
He could speak the technical side, but he could also really break it down and relate it and associate it with things that made you understand it, even if you didn't have your hands on it.
Absolutely. No, I would agree. He was a great teacher. So working down there with Greg, working in labs and things like that, where'd you go from there?
That was really it. So after about 2 years, Greg and I, had talked, built a relationship. We were really close. Had decided, maybe I'm going to take that next shot at college, try to finish that out. Was looking at going the chemical engineering route. Like I said before, something always seems to get in the way. My mom's company was bought out. She wasn't sure whether she was going to have a job. And I mean, we're talking 2 or 3 months after I left. I didn't leave on the best of terms.
So you left EAB for a short period of time.
Yes,
Yeah.
about 6 months.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, Mom, don't worry about it. Decided, well, I'm not going to call EAB back immediately. I'll call around, see what's out there. Ended up with, working for the competition for about 4 months. And it was just a stark difference between the way I was accustomed to doing stuff and the way they were doing stuff.
Gotcha.
And it was, didn't work out well. Ended up calling Galen back, even though I left on bad terms. Went in, talked to him. He felt like I had potential. Felt like, I could really help the company and move forward, and gave me the option of heading to San Antonio, which San Antonio was a really small branch. I think 3 or 4 guys were there at the time. And we both thought it would be best for me to move and kind of get a fresh start somewhere.
Sure.
And it took off from there.
Yeah, so you got over there. We're talking, early?
2000.
It had to be like 2001, 2001.
July
right?
2000.
Because I interviewed in 2002, and you were working there.
Yeah.
I was out on the job you were on.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. So, yeah, it was July 2000. The only reason why I remember it being July is because we were trying to move on the weekend of the 4th.
Okay.
And there was no trucks available for rent.
Okay.
And we ended up I had a little Nissan, and we ended up making several trips.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay, so you get over there and you start working. You knew what you were doing at that point. So, and Gary Miller was running that office. So, I know you were working on schools because that's where I first saw you was, in a school. But then, what else did you end up doing over there? Kind of talk about your progression from that point. Obviously, that was still 20-something years ago, to today. Yeah,
one thing I would say that was a difference between, say, the Houston and San Antonio office, and it was really out of necessity, is we didn't necessarily have a healthcare guy. We didn't have the K through 12 guy. I mean, it was whatever work was up and what you could handle at the time. So, I started out on schoolwork, but in a short period, really ended up the largest project. Well, it's the Frost Bank Center now. I mean, early on, I think that was 2001. Um, you know, testing that arena in some major high schools. But shortly after that, we built a really good relationship with HCA in the healthcare market. Spent a lot of time in Austin and in the San Antonio area and even Louisiana, uh, pretty much taking care of a lot of that healthcare. And then when that died down, it was helping, wherever I was needed. Still over some of the school districts. Judson ISD was one of them that we had built a really good relationship with, had a lot of projects. But by that time, we had grown a little bit. We had, additional teams. So really kind of in more of a leadership role, helping, either supplement or manage those teams while, I was on my own projects. And then from there, of course, the 2010 is when we started the commissioning division.
Yep.
I was really involved in that. Trinity University, that was a merged services project for us where we were doing the tab and the commissioning. Got on some Texas Tech projects with some commissioning. So it's where really the commissioning really took off, and that's really around the time I was promoted to commissioning manager from that point. And still overseeing probably half of our tab work. I mean, I was handling the majority of the commissioning work on my own. Gary would supplement, for me, mainly because in San Antonio, geographically, I mean, really we're the Central Texas office. I mean, we stretch as far as Waco is where we kind of overlap with Dallas, and it's really client-based, who they're used to dealing with. And then traveling all the way down to the valley, and we even go as far east as College Station, which is where we kind of overlap with y'all. So kind of client-based. So we cover a lot of ground. So can't necessarily be in two places at once. So me and Gary would coordinate closely.
You were almost, you guys weren't a big enough office to have a field ops manager or senior project manager, but you were really kind of in that role.
Yeah.
You wore a lot of hats.
Yeah, Gary, I think put a lot of faith in me. And I liked it. I actually, one thing I'll say about Gary, he's probably one of the best bosses I've ever worked for. I hate the word boss, but as far as a leader, I mean, I can, my wife and I bowled on Wednesday nights. I would stop by, not that I didn't put in a lot of hours, but anytime I went in the office, he was in there working. I mean, he led by example, almost to a detriment, I would say. And I remember pulling him aside and just telling him, look, give me more. I want to help you. I see you here all the time. Kane, another guy in our office, is like, put some faith in us, put some stuff on our plate, and let us help you out. You can't take on everything yourself.
Yeah. So it was roundabout, help me out. I became branch manager here in, I think, 2014 or 15. And it was 2016, wasn't it? It wasn't long after that, 2016, that you moved into that role in San Antonio, right?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, say, the month or the quarter. But, yeah, 2016 is when I moved in the branch manager role. Gary was retiring. He took on kind of a technical role for a year to help with the transition.
Yeah.
Well, he was helpful. Really helped fill in some holes. It was good to have him there for that year to ask questions.
So since you've been branch manager there, what do you think are some of the changes? Maybe changes aren't the right thing. The San Antonio office has grown, right? And the company's grown. But what do you think are some of the major, I don't want to say improvements, but what's changed? I'm just because I know what it is, but I'm asking you to explain it. I mean, what do you think are some of the major? I mean, obviously we've experienced some growth and things like that, but what do you think is the most significant change that's happened in let's just say the last, because it's roughly 10 years, 8 to 10 years, something like that, in your market, in the office, or even with the company?
Well, specifically to San Antonio, I mean, compared to the rest of the company, we're relatively young. I mean, we started in the 90s, primarily to handle the USAA work. We had a lot of guys traveling. I mean, USAA is a big building. I think it's still the largest occupied building, possibly, after they built the G&H building. There was an effort to open that, and then really it's getting our name out there in the market. San Antonio is a tough market. It doesn't necessarily have the, I would say, funding and the finances that say the Houston and the Dallas market have.
Sure.
So really, it's just about the time and really word of mouth and people understanding the value and what we bring to the table as opposed to another firm. And that's where we're really starting to see, that really pay off. Through our marketing efforts, word of mouth, engineers, architects, we have a lot of really good relationships with owners now. Primarily, we started out the biggest change, I would say, really in the last 2 to 3 years has been the amount of work that we're doing to owner now, as opposed to through the contractor. It's really hard when you deliver a different level of service and have to competitively bid jobs through contractors.
Sure.
Because they're competitive. They're trying to beat the next guy out. A lot of these projects are obviously the finances have to be there. Working direct for the owner, they're in control of the purse strings. So ultimately, if you're delivering a good service, once they see the difference, once we have that opportunity to get our foot in the door, and they see the difference, they see our report, and they feel the difference for just to hit the podcast term, but they really see how we deliver, how we engage, how we stay committed to a project, and not just that, the technical aspect. I mean, the way we can communicate with the design team on a higher level, and the respect that they have for us and our name in the industry, because we've always pioneered and really been involved in the industry. Everything just ties together, and ultimately, they end up with the building that they envisioned, and they're not dealing with problems. So,
absolutely. So, throughout your career, or we could say the latter part of your career, right? What do you think is the toughest project you've had to work on, and why?
Toughest project and why? Well, the toughest and the most memorable was probably, and this is still a ways back, but was probably the University Hospital, the Sky Tower project. And really, it was about time frame. 1,000,000 square foot hospital, 2 to 3 months on the schedule, and all the equipment's not started up.
Sure.
Just communicating, and really just the teamwork we've got. We ended up with. I think 20 guys total out there.
I was going to say you had folks from all offices out there working on that project, didn't you?
Yeah, we had multiple teams from Dallas and Houston helping us on the project. It was difficult. It was a lot of hours, a lot of 7-day work weeks, a lot of 12-hour days, and then leaving that job and even having to go to others, to try to keep our head above water. But it was difficult, but it's one of those jobs that you look back on and you're proud that you were a part of it.
Sure.
And you got through it. Not just that, but then you get to see kind of the team mentality. Dallas and Houston weren't primarily working on the weekends with us. We didn't really ask. We're there local. We're putting in the time. These guys were away from their families. We really didn't want to ask. But I can say that once the teams found out that, hey, you guys are here Saturday and Sunday, and they immediately, called back to either respective offices and extended their stay and started working the same hours with us. So it was a very memorable job. But it was really time frame. But it was, like I said, one of the most memorable just because how we came together as a group and attacked that project.
No, that's great. That's great. So I'm going to get into the meat of some of the difference points. And this is a little unfair to you because you were part of the team that came up with the difference points. And you've been involved with this. So it's not as much of a you can't give me the rehearsed answers, Daryl.
Well, I've slept since then, so there's no telling.
Okay,
There's a lot that's happened between
good.
point A and B.
So when we talk about ownership mentality, right? And it may have even been you that coined that phrase when we were putting this together. But what do you think? What does ownership mentality mean to you?
Well, I didn't come up with the phrase. It's a standard phrase in the industry, but it's really taking ownership of a project, as if you were the owner. How would you like this done? How would, being a team player, staying involved,
How do you think that we do that versus our competition especially in your market?
I think it has a lot to do with the training in our hiring process. I mean, there's a certain personality and mentality, and I mean, some of it's innate, but then I think we do a really good job of nurturing it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that we focus on the project. We practice doing it right, regardless of the financial outcome. I know that's hard to say, but I think if you do things the right way, the finances follow. It happens on its own. It's not something you can worry about or have to worry about. But it's really, it starts as soon as the guys enter their first training class, and really about how the guys conduct themselves that are leading the teams in the field. Doing the stuff the right way, being engaged with the team, the contractors, the troubleshooting, trying not to walk away with something with a problem and staying committed to the project. It's not. I've always looked at it, and a lot of our guys, at least, we bring it up all the time. If this was your building, and you were paying for this, would you be okay for that? With the way this is.
Absolutely.
And it's not. So it's really taking ownership of the project, taking pride really in your work, and walking away from something and being proud of it. I wouldn't be here for as long as I did if I felt like I was just punching a clock every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wait until the whistle blows and walking away. So
sure.
I want to feel like at the end of each day I've accomplished something.
No, that's great. So another thing that we talk about is project leadership, right? And that's one of those. I don't know. That's a sticky one. I mean, it definitely sets EAB apart. How do you think we show that on projects and with our clients?
I think it's influence. I mean, is the best way to put it. You don't want leadership to get confused with being a dictator. It's easy to yell, point fingers, and try to get people to move in a direction.
Tell them they're wrong and stuff like that, right?
It's different to try to influence and direct somebody. Rather than making statements, you're asking questions. You're trying to direct the team, or the process. Make people think about stuff critically. Put them in a position. Not only that, but it empowers them. They're helping make decisions on the project, and they feel engaged.
Absolutely. To me, some of that goes back to the beginnings. The guys that founded our company. I've only knew Jim Reed briefly, but everybody always tells the stories about how he would, if he found a problem, he would go sit down with an engineer or an owner or whatever it may be, and he never told them it was a problem. He just asked them a bunch of questions until they kind of figured out that it was an issue and came to the solution on their own. And I'm not sure that we can do it as tactfully as Jim did these days, but I certainly think that we probably go a little bit beyond maybe what the typical tab or even commissioning scope may be. But the reason why is because we're trying to get the desired outcome, right?
Correct. At the end of the day, it goes back to the ownership mentality. We're trying to walk away from a building that meets design intent.
Yeah.
And people are comfortable, whether that intent's temperature, humidity, pressure, air changes, whatever the project dictates or the design.
Yeah.
That we walk away. That the building's right and that it can be used the way it's intended to be used.
Sure. Absolutely. So another one that we talk about is thought leadership. And you briefly mentioned it earlier. You kind of said we were a pioneer in the industry. But, how do you think that thought leadership has allowed us to become the EAB that we are today?
I would say that it I guess this would go back to when we first started implementing the leadership training. Once we started to get to a certain size, we started to realize quickly how important the training programs and a number of other programs were in the amount of influence that's being part of all these technical committees and the different things that we do. But with part of that leadership came the other committees that we've broken out internally. A lot of companies, I think, when they promote within, they look a lot at tenure, or they look at people that have been here forever. We really try to keep the less experienced guys. I don't want to say younger because it's not necessarily young. It's less experienced guys involved, but that's where a lot of the ideas come from.
Sure.
And where the seeds get planted. It's trying to keep them engaged, keep them involved. I had a lot of ideas, 15 years ago. It's about keeping those ideas fresh and moving forward and trying to pioneer and look for better ways or more efficient ways to do things, or different ways to impact, the owner and the owner's processes to make it easier, more efficient on them. So I think, like I said, we're not looking at 3 or 4 people that are involved at the head of the company. We're keeping, a lot of youth and stuff injected into that to keep the ideas flowing, looking for better ways to do stuff. So,
Absolutely. Just in talking about your history here, there was a lot of good practical experience. And you kind of alluded to training earlier with our team, but what does practical experience mean to you?
Practical means you've actually put your hands on it, you've taken it apart and putting it back together.
Yeah.
It's no longer theory.
So how do you think that we apply that on a day-to-day basis on our projects?
On a day-to-day process, you talking about with technicians in training, or?
Yeah, well, what sets, we say that practical experience is one of the things that sets EAB apart from maybe other folks in our industry. And I think there's a number of things that play into that, but what do you think about that?
Well, I would say the one thing we do, and it starts early on as we're mentoring, the next group that's coming through, is we research. One of the biggest things before we put our hands on it, if it's a new piece, whether it's an airflow monitor or terminal unit, even when I brought up pneumatics earlier, perfect example would be a pneumatic project. Got on a project that was all pneumatics, went out there, looked at the components, the pieces, looked at the cut sheets on them, made sure we understand, how it works, how the different pieces are going to work together, and then go out there and get our hands on it and start working on it. Beyond just the submittals we're getting on a project, right? It's really that, I guess I would call it desire for knowledge. I think it's instilled in a lot of our guys, and it starts at the top and works its way down. But just understanding what the component is, what it's capable of, what it can do, really understanding it before you get your hands on it and start trying to play with it. So,
yeah. So when it comes to equipment, control systems, things like that out in the field, do you feel like we know less than the people who are supposed to know about it, more than the people we know are supposed to know about it? Like factory technicians or controls technicians and things like that. Where do you think we stand there?
I would say most of my experiences is we were more knowledgeable. And again, I think it's a testament to training. I think in a lot of cases, industries are going the opposite direction we are with the training.
Sure.
It's at substantial cost and effort on the company's behalf, and I can fully understand why a lot of these companies just don't do the training, or at least at the level that we do. There's a lot of attrition out in the field. There's a lot of people moving around, and they get sent to a 2-day class here, a 3-day class there. But we really do know a lot of stuff in and out. We've sat on projects with other contractors to walk them through how to set up a device. Bringing up pneumatics again, the control contractor that was on that project, at first they didn't like some of the information that we were bringing to light and the way we were setting it up, but after they realized we knew what we were talking about, it was one particular school district that was still bent on using on pneumatics.
Wow.
They ended up sending the whole office out with me to watch me set up the valves, the units, make sure, things were matched up. I mean, they were still using digital controls, but they were using EPs.
Yeah.
And rather than set the starting points and the controls and everything upright and the pneumatics the way they were supposed to, they were spending a lot more time trying to customize the spans of their EPs to make it work with each individual device.
Oh, wow.
When it was a lot easier than that. So, I mean, it's and it wasn't always that way, but really in the last, I'd say, 2 to 5 years, I just don't think the training is out there in the industry anymore.
Yeah. I would agree with you. So I'll just ask this last question, and I hope you have a good answer for me. What do you love about EAB?
The people. I don't, and I think you know this from being in some of our management meetings. I mean, and I tell a lot of guys, my son's friends, I tell people, everybody, when they're coming out of high school, they're trying to figure out what they want to do for the rest of their life. And to me, I always hear people say, find something you love and go do it, right? Well, I love my hobbies, but if I had to clock in every day and I couldn't choose when I'm going to wake up and when I'm going to do it, it probably wouldn't be that much fun anymore.
Yeah.
To me, it's more about the people you work with and the company. You want to find a company where you're not a number, and you want to find a group of guys that you can work around all day, and it doesn't feel like you're watching the clock waiting for 8 or 10 hours to go by. And that's what the number one thing to me. I think we've just established a really good culture here. I think that door open mentality, just being really straightforward with people. The core values that we've established. I don't beat around the bush. I'm straightforward with guys, and I think they like that. I'm not trying to, talk them into something. I'm just telling them, how it is and what we need to do. But it's the people is what I enjoy about the company. I don't necessarily feel like I'm coming to work every day.
Okay. So I'm going to go off script on this one. Where do you think we'll be 3 to 5 years from now?
3 to 5? Man, it's I think the sky's the limit. Just some of the services that we've added recently as far as critical environment, the training center, the traction the training center is getting, the traction the CEC team is getting. The sky's the limit. I don't even know that we really entertained those areas that hard until really the owners were looking for a better option, right?
Yeah.
And just the way
I think it was even that way in commissioning. I mean, we kind of stayed back a little bit from commissioning, and when people begged us to get in is when we said, okay, let's make a run at doing the whole thing. We were comfortable with mechanical, but it was
on the tab side, commissioning has really started. I mean, it's a trust but verify process.
Sure.
I mean, we were talking about how much do people know and what direction's that going in, and I think commissioning kind of points to that. I mean, the systems have gotten more and more complicated. People are getting less and less training.
Yep.
And you have to have somebody there to be able to bridge the gap and speak the language between the electrical and mechanical and, plumbing or the other contractors. I see the training really taking off. I think, it's a unique facility. There are unique courses that aren't available anywhere else or through any other entity. There's colleges, but
they don't teach what we teach here.
Yeah,
they teach the practical knowledge.
Yeah, they show you. You basically prove that you can do the math and you can do the science, and then once you find your career, you're going to learn the practical knowledge and how to apply those things. So it's a good hands-on experience. I don't know. I could see us going down different avenues too if there's a demand. So. Definitely growth. There's not there's a stark difference between us and our competition. And typically, once we have that opportunity. Once we get our foot in the door, and the ownership, experiences the difference. It's really hard. It really raises the bar and expectations, and I mean, that's really the goal, right? Is with the training center and other things, we're really trying to push the industry. We're trying to standardize the industry. There's a lot of stuff that, is different. I mean, tab is kind of that black box, commissioning more so, especially envelope commissioning, where
Yeah.
there's some standards and a lot of consistencies that's not in place. And, we're trying to raise that bar in the industry. Competition is good for innovation. So if we can get everybody basically playing at the same level and on the same field, I mean, the sky's the limit, not just for us, but the industry in general. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.